Hey everyone, glad to be back. Woo! Got Shelley Kino with me and so excited to talk all things IEP related. So if you're watching, if you could put hashtag live in the comments, that would be great. And what would even be more special is if you could put your name in your comment, because if you had not granted StreamYard permission, as you may know, I can't tell who I'm talking to. So I really like to shout out and say, hey, and I've got Shelley's website scrolling across the screen there, so you can find her if you're interested. But I met Shelley about November, I guess, of 2020. And I was looking for speakers to give us IEP and data collection kind of tips for my December summit, which many of you attended. And so I was going to have her pop in here and share just a little bit, remind us what she talked about a little bit, and talk about what she's got going on, because tomorrow, Tuesday and Wednesday, all of the sessions from that December summit are going to be free and accessible again. Yes, we love free.
So cool.
So at the end, I will put up the link again, but it's youcanthriveandsped.com. So if you are not on my email list and you're watching this, the only way you can get the free access to not only Shelley's presentation, but 9 total presentations, all on data collection, progress monitoring, is one of the most fantastic groups of tips and tricks that I've put together. And people all the time are emailing me like, oh, I'm so glad I have those strategies. So you can get all of that for free if you go to youcanthriveandsped.com. So hey, Shelley, welcome. Sorry about that long introduction.
No, that's great, Kara. I'm so excited for everybody to get this free. And yeah, I mean, I tuned in back in December, even though I was a presenter. There were things that I learned. So there was always, excuse me, I feel like as a teacher, we have to be a good example to our students that there's always something you can learn, even if it's a topic that you have heard about 27,000 times. That presenter is going to share something that you can use in some way, shape, or form. That's my philosophy. So hopefully people are finding that with the information that I shared back in that summit, and that during this replay and any others that you might do that I'm involved in, hopefully they'll learn something.
31. I just finished year 31.
Wow.
So, but still, when I interviewed all you guys in December, I was like, oh my gosh, never thought of this, never thought of that. And I consider myself to be very savvy. And obviously, as you guys know, time-saving tips are my thing. And so it's just so neat to hear different people's perspectives and how they do things differently. And a little tweak here or there can make a huge difference. So
absolutely. Absolutely. And
always good stuff.
Yeah, I was full-time teaching for about 15 years. And prior to that, I was a paraprofessional and a substitute. And so in total, I have over 25 years of special educator experience. And so I learned from people as I was a sub in their classroom, or especially when I was a paraprofessional. I picked up a lot of good things that I wanted to do. And then those things that I was like, oh, I don't want to do that.
Yeah. You don't need everything, but
right. Exactly. And what might work for my personality may not work for yours, may not work for somebody that, is listening to this or listens to the summit. So it's good to hear.
If I remember right, you're like more of a paper pencil data collector person.
I am. I'm old school. I am
so
old
y'all
school.
know I'm really techie. And so I take Shelley's stuff and I would put it in a spreadsheet if I was going to do that and all. But she has this just amazing way she showed us how to track data and end up with all your percentages and everything at the end. So I don't want you to miss that.
Yeah. I know there's probably apps out now, that you can do that. But for me, it's just still easier for me to do it. The Google Sheets or Microsoft Excel, whichever program that you're more familiar with. That's how I set my stuff up. And most of the time. And prior to that, it was just, I was going into Microsoft Word and making a table and doing it that way. So, I mean,
well, and I know when I did in person and was traveling around the building all the time, tech wasn't the best way for me to get my data then. Like a clipboard was better because I needed to be able to grab and have it all organized. So at the end of the day, I could get it all into the computer, but trying to like drag everything and have it up when you need it, it was time wasting, not time helpful. So depends on your situation. But having just something on a clipboard can be the most fabulous thing. And I even know the last couple of years I taught in person. Y'all, if you've been following me a while, you know that in January of 2020, I switched to a 90% virtual program. So I sometimes see kids in person, but I don't have a classroom. So it's very different. They come basically more in for like a study hall, but they only come for study hall. They're not on campus the whole time. But the last few years, I had those giant command hooks, and I had clipboards everywhere so that whoever was working with the student, the para, the teacher, the speech teacher would come, whoever needed to track data could just grab the right clipboard for the student and have everything they need right there. So the systems that Shelley shares in her video, though, are the key to that. The clipboard's the object to transfer it around, but the power is in what you put on that clipboard. So
very true. And a lot of the data, specifically behavioral data, that needs to be taken in the moment. And for me, it's just much easier. I mean, even if it's just a sticky note that I have, you know, or if it's not even a sticky note, it's just I'm marking on my hand. I mean, I'm talking really old school now, but that's what I did at the very beginning. And then I would transfer that stuff into my spreadsheets. But as the years went on, then I realized, okay, you know, a lot of the tests that the curriculums would provide for reading or math had skills broken out in those tests. And so it's like, oh, well, here, this is, you know, multiplication. They did 5 out of 5, or they did 7 out of 10 or whatever on this test. And that's the data that I needed from that piece of assessment.
And you didn't have to have another probe ready.
No, exactly.
So it's nice to have some probes ready, but oh my goodness, we need to use what's available to us. And that's one of the things that I love about using recurring email. I'm big on recurring email. If you've not heard me talk about that before, whew, life changer. But basically what it does is you set the email up once, and then like every week or however often you tell it to, it sends an email to somebody. And so I was so successful getting gen ed teachers on board with helping collect that data, when once a week in their inbox was like, hey, was there a math test this week? Can you check? Were there any word problems involving fractions? If there were, can you put how many right out of the total? You know, just email that to me. And so got so much more data. Like, we've got to utilize all the people in a child's life. Hi, so some more people popping on. Again, I'd love you to put in the comments, say, hey, let us know who you are. Because StreamYard hides that unless you gave it permission. And if you're watching the replay, put hashtag replay. We just like to know how many people we reach, because we do this to share and to help you guys. So
exactly.
Yeah, but definitely it is huge to be able to utilize all the different people that work with a student. And in the virtual world that I've found myself in, using parents and the kids themselves more than ever before. Right. Obviously, we have to note, because we don't know exactly how the environment might have been controlled when we take data. But sometimes, because of the restraints of the virtual world, you don't have time to do the 10 probes. So if you can get a couple done and make a mark on it, it's better than 0. So
absolutely. And something that I started doing towards the end of my career, and I'm not sure that I talked about it back in the December summit, but I know that you are a big proponent of this, is Google Forms. And, you know, just typing something up and sending that out to everybody who works with a student, you know, a little checkbox, you know, especially like for accommodations. We need to really take data on accommodations, and I'm almost 100% positive I didn't talk about that at the summit before. So this is an extra bit of information that you're going to get. We need to know what accommodations the child is really utilizing, because especially that first IEP, we don't really know everything that there is to know about that student. And so, you know, we tend to give, or at least I always tended to give, those same types of preferential seating, extended time, tests, you know, read aloud. But for some kids,
like anything you might need for that first IEP, rather than because we don't know. Yeah.
Right. And so, you know, then I started sending out a weekly form to my to my gen ed teachers. And I just say, tell me, you know, is the child utilizing this? Yes, I know you're providing it, but are they utilizing it? Because if they're not utilizing it, then either we need to find out why, or we just need to take it out. I mean, if we know why they're not using it, then we just need to take that accommodation out.
If they're successful without it, then
they don't need it.
And And if they're not successful in not using it, then that's a whole different,
Right.
we got to figure out what is the issue with that. So you're so right, because that's great data to have when you're sitting at the IEP table trying to decide, because especially like something you sit at that table and families can be very nervous to take things out of an IEP. And so if we have data that shows something, then that can be a great thing and a positive thing, rather than thinking like, oh, you just don't want to provide that, which sometimes that's the communication that happens, but isn't what's intended to happen. And so that data needs to be used, both ways for that.
Yeah.
So, and I found that the parents that I send those weekly reminders to, hey, how often do they need prompted to get on the Zoom meeting, or how much help? And they feel so much more involved. Like most of the parents, they want to understand what's going on with the child and share. Of course, we have some that are overwhelmed. Whatever their situation is, they're not able to give us that feedback, or not able to help those little darlings at home, because everybody was just thrown into it.
Right.
I can't imagine being a parent and of any children that are below the age of 12, and suddenly boom, and who knows what your life was like, and you've got to try to school them as well. And then you put any type of special need on top of that. Oh my goodness, the stress that our family went through along with us. We all survived this pandemic.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And, some of the things that I think about that I do with my parent clients is, we talk about with their IEP team for their child, like how much extended time. So this data, when you're talking about the accommodation of extended time, in order to have it be a valid accommodation, you want to make sure that everyone is giving the same amount of extended time. So, you don't want to have one teacher who gives till the end of the following school day, for example, and another teacher who only gives to the end of the next class period as their extended time. So we need to know, and that's again where that data comes in of, well, how long is reasonable, and how long does the child, it's difficult to say how long they really need, but
and I find that to be one of the most difficult, glad you brought it up, accommodations to be true on, because it seems to be so dependent on different factors. Because if it's because they forgot to do it, that's very different than if they're confused about how to do it. So that extended time can be more flexible. And one thing I started doing with kids in that accommodation is putting like one day after TOR lets everybody know, or something like that. Teacher of record, I should say.
Thank you. Because, I was like,
what? Depends on where you are. If we
exactly.
Terminologies, right? Yeah. But because the kids sometimes would, like 3 days later, I would find out they had a 0, not because nobody communicated, but because everybody's busy, and maybe that's the day the teacher got the grade entered, and now it's 3 days later, and whoops, they already had an extra 3 days, but not really, because they needed reminded. Part of what they need is a reminder or a reteach or whatever. And so we would put that in to qualify, and it really helped the gen ed team and the parents and everybody to understand, okay, so it really is about the learning opportunity. It's not about an excuse to not do your work. Like, that's not the point. So.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's awesome. Because when I'm thinking, data collection, data drives the IEP, or it's supposed to. And, you can deflate that emotion balloon by presenting the facts. Here's the data. Here is, on this assignment, or this test, maybe we gave them however much they wanted, and then we saw that they used 10 minutes and that was enough. And then, then maybe that was in science, but maybe in social studies, depending on the kind of test that's given, they may need more than 10 minutes in that class. But if you have the factual data of, okay, here's 3 different tests and they took, 10 extra minutes, 40 extra minutes, however many, or they didn't need extra minutes on the last one, then you can kind of average that and say, okay, for social studies, we just need 20 extra minutes. For math, kid's fine. Doesn't take the extra time, doesn't need the extra time. So no extra time on a math assessment.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be applied evenly.
Right, exactly.
Great.
Yeah. And talking with the team about that and having that data, having that discussion of, well, how long does it take him or her to take a test in your class? And how long, and just talking with the team. And again, those Google Forms are great for that communication throughout the school year, because I never had time to talk with my gen ed teachers. My prep time wasn't their prep time. My lunch time wasn't always their lunch time. If one or both of us even got prep times or lunch times on a particular day,
Yes.
and we both already had things after school and before school. And, darn it, we'd try our best to meet. But those Google Forms, when they could hit it at, their time that they had.
And then when you do get that time together, it's more streamlined to figure out the issue or whatever, instead of just gathering all the stuff that could have been done in an email. Kind of like staff meetings that could have been an email. Let's make an email, but we can make an email.
Exactly.
And since we've talked a lot about coming around the IEP table tonight, I wanted to mention too that one of my big things I try to communicate to parents and staff is, let's all show up assuming we all want what's best for this child. Mm-hmm. I think so many times we show up, and because of different things that happen, a teacher might be upset or the parent might be upset. And so you walk into the room and you're like, I expect you to not help my child, or I expect you not to want us to help the child, and that kind of thing. And it's so awful, and the tension, and it's hard to problem solve that way. And so try to just leave that outside the door and come around that table assuming that everybody's intention is good. Because 99% of the time it is. People don't go into education because they don't care about children. And parents don't not care about their children. So everybody in there cares deeply about the child, and trying to realize that the mindset is for good is a big deal.
Yep.
And
really
being open,
like you and I talked about at the beginning of this, being open to, we both have the same goal in mind, but our ideas of how we're going to get to that goal are probably not going to be identical. So being able to hear what each person is presenting and why they are thinking that's the better way to go.
Yeah, that's great. Well, Shelley, I have enjoyed chatting. I always love hanging out with you, and
me too.
Getting more seasoned, and it's fun. And so remember, I'm going to switch the ticker here. And so you can thrive in SPED. We'll get you the free ticket to see the 9 free videos from the December Summit on data collection and progress monitoring. If you're already on my email list, you do not need to sign up there because I'm sending it to everybody. Just thought it would be easier that way this time. And not only that, but there's going to be another summit the end of June, starting the 28th. And Shelley is going to be doing another session for us for that. Yay! So I'm super excited about that. So have you decided on that, what the topic's going to be for that yet, Shelley?
I have. It's not data collection. Am I allowed to share that?
Yes, I'm saying.
Okay. It's on behavior strategies, lessons for a lifetime. So it's things that I have learned, and that I do a professional development on this that is like a whole morning session. So I'm gonna give you as much as I can in 30 minutes. But there's some key components, and I'm very excited to share that with you.
That'll be great, because special ed teachers are educators, assistants, anybody in education really is always trying to figure out more strategies for behavior. So I love that. Can't wait to make our session. I think we're doing that this week. And then it'll go live sometime the week of June 28th. I haven't released the date for everybody yet, so watch for that too. And thanks for joining us in. I hope you learned something. Leave us a comment. We love to hear. Bye.
Bye-bye.